do right here is go back, way back into time.
Back in the day, back in the day.
Welcome to my video series called Back in the Day, where I tell bike-related stories from back in the day. Episode 7 takes place on the dead-end street that I grew up on in the city of Carson. The school year had just ended, and me, my brother Johnny, and our neighborhood buddies, Chattarooski, Curtis, P-Dub, and JQ, were excited because we were finally free. It was the first day of summer vacation. Back then, we had 3 full months of no school, and the first thing we wanted to do was celebrate. And how are we going to do that? Ride our BMX bikes to Jackrabbit. For those of you who grew up in Carson, you know about Jackrabbit. Some of the guys north of the 405 called it Rabbit Hills, but either way, that's where we were headed. If you don't know about Jackrabbit, you missed out. Big time. Big time. Jackrabbit was a big dirt field where motocross bikes would race around and do jumps. 4x4 trucks would do their thing, and us on our BMX bikes would have the time of our life. We loved going there, and it was like going to Disneyland for us. There were all kinds of hills and tracks and jumps in there, and they all had names. One of the most famous hills in Jackrabbit was called Suicide. What you know about Suicide Mountain? It was a steep dirt downhill that went straight down into a gully and then came back up, and you could get serious air on the jump part of it. Jackrabbit was located on Main Street and Del Amo Boulevard. Back then, Del Amo Boulevard didn't cut across the 405 like it does today. The red outline in the picture is where Jackrabbit was located. On this particular day, the first hill we wanted to hit was what everyone called Horseshoe. Horseshoe was located on the north side of Jackrabbit and faced the 405 freeway. It was a steep dirt downhill that had a trail on it that was shaped like a horseshoe. At the bottom of Horseshoe was a chain link fence that separated Jackrabbit with the 405 freeway. We couldn't wait to smash down Horseshoe because it took some technical skill at the bottom so you didn't crash into the fence. When you dropped into Horseshoe, you had to tap your brake towards the bottom so that you slid sideways to stay on the curve. Otherwise, you would hit that chain link fence. To go back up on a BMX bike was impossible, but on a motocross bike, you can jam down it, slide around the curve, and go back up. We loved shooting down Horseshoe and sliding sideways down at the bottom, and we spent hours doing it. On this day, there were 6 of us, and before we pedaled off, our little neighbor next door heard we were going to Jackrabbit, and he wanted to roll with us. He didn't have a bike, but for whatever reason, we let him come with us. So he jumped on my brother's handlebars. We pedaled off from our dead-end street, headed to Jackrabbit, but before we got there, we received a sign for things to come. As we were rolling down Main Street, headed to Jackrabbit, our little neighbor stuck his foot in my brother's spokes. What an idiot. And they went flying over the handlebars. There were cars zooming by us, and man, they're lucky they didn't get ran over. Our little neighbor was hurting, and a couple bikers came running out of a bar that was next to us to help. He ended up not wanting to continue on, so he limped his little ass home. To get into Jackrabbit, there was a certain way we went on a back street that was hidden so no one would see us going in. But once our tires hit Jackrabbit, we were pumped and we were headed to Horseshoe. We passed Suicide Mountain, Dropout, the Whoop-de-Doos, and we finally got to Horseshoe. As we stood atop of Horseshoe, we could see the Goodyear blimp, the Carson Mall, and everything around us. I flew down Horseshoe and slid around that curve. I love sliding around that curve. My brother, Chattarooski, and Curtis went down and did the same thing. Our other 2 friends were still at the top of Horseshoe. This was the first time they were there, so they were scared to go down, and they kept asking us, how do we do it? We yelled at them, tap your brake about 3/4 of the way down, so you slide around the curve and you don't hit that fence. PW went down and he did it. He had a big smile on his face, and we couldn't wait for JQ to make his way down so that we could go back up and do it again. JQ kept asking us how to do it, so we started teasing him. We were like, man, quit being a pussy and go down, and tap the brake so you slide sideways at the curve. He went down and we were all cheering, but JQ didn't hit the brakes, and he went flying into the fence. Face first. From our point of view, we saw his face go up against the fence. And he did a flip. He kind of stuck on the fence for a second and then dropped, and we were like, oh shit, and we ran over to him. He was on the ground kind of whimpering, and he had blood all over his forehead. We're Gen X. We don't wear helmets. I asked JQ, "Are you all right, man?" And as he whimpered, he said, "I'm not crying, man. I'm just shook up." We all laughed and said, "Go ahead and cry, man. We don't care." We were just glad JQ was alive, but the bleeding wasn't stopping, so I took my shirt off and wrapped it around his head. We picked him up, dusted him off, and said, "Let's get you home." He hopped on my handlebars, and I rode him all the way home, while my brother rode his bike, holding JQ's bike next to him, like this. I'm not sure why we just didn't have him ride his own bike, but we were kids, and we were probably scared about what his mom was going to do to us. When we got back to our dead-end street and JQ's house, he hopped off the handlebars, got his bike, and walked up to his house. But we didn't stick around. We didn't want to catch the wrath of his mom. Thankfully, JQ didn't tell his mom the whole story, so he went on other adventures with us in Jackrabbit. JQ, if you're watching, I hope you're doing good, man. Hit me up. I'd love to catch up with you and get you out here riding with us. The moral of the story, peer pressure is a mother, especially if you're a kid hanging with your buddies. You just want to be accepted, but if things don't go right, you can end up being the laughingstock of the neighborhood. Thankfully, we were all like brothers, so we had each other's backs. But sometimes you might not want to give in, because you might get jacked up like how JQ did. Thanks for watching. I have a lot more of these stories coming, so stay tuned. If you like this video, please hit the like button and leave a comment. Let me know if you went to Jackrabbit, or if you had something like Jackrabbit in your neighborhood. If you haven't subscribed yet, please subscribe to my channel, hit the notification bell, and share this video with your family and friends. I'm sure your dad and uncles have stories like this. I'll see you on the next Back in the Day video story. Let me know what you guys think about this video. Hit the comments, and if you haven't subscribed, please subscribe. We're just glad JQ was alive.